Venti is considered one of the strongest characters in Genshin, but as of late, my boy tone deaf, drunk femboy bard has been power creeped. Well, Venti hasn't been power creeped by the characters in the game, but rather the whole game. When Genshin Impact initially came out, Venti was probably the strongest character in the game. I mean, some people would say Diluc was, but like overall Venti was the strongest character in the game. For one simple reason. He sucks all his enemies into a black hole that gives Hu Tao new customers. Venti's black hole is insanely strong, even to date. It's really strong. But the problem is, his ult only really works well on small enemies like Hilitrolls and treasure hoarders. And the problem with that is, pretty much all the strong and hard enemies to fight in game are big boys. Like Abyss Lecter, Abyss Herald, Geovishap, and the new region, Inazuma, has pretty much 90% of the enemies in Inazuma are just the, what do you call them? The straw hat dudes, right? And those guys, they're the basic enemies in Inazuma, and Venti's ultimate is not nearly as effective against them. So that means that a lot of the newer enemies in the game, Venti isn't very effective against. Yeah, he's still useful, but most of the stuff he does against bigger enemies, you can just use other animal characters for. So that's what I mean by Venti's been power creeped by the game. MiHoYo's adding more and more enemies that Venti can't really suck into his black hole. Right now that might not seem like a problem. Right now it is a good thing since Venti is a little too OP, but over time, if MiHoYo continues this trend of making stronger and stronger enemies that Venti can't really suck into his black hole very well, he's gonna end up dropping from an S tier unit to a A or B tier unit. So that's why I think Venti might be the weakest Archon by the time Shaznia rolls around. Zhongli I think is gonna be relevant forever. He might be power creeped, but like highly doubt it. And there's one big elephant in the room I haven't talked about. Kazuha. And Sucrose, but Kazuha. So he came out in the game recently, and I was like, oh, he's good I guess. Then his banner went away, and everyone realized he's really good. Not just normal good, he's really good, like S tier. Maybe he's like probably the second best or the best animal support in the game. Venti and him I would say are on par. The difference is Venti is good against smaller targets, whereas Kazuha is good against larger targets. That's pretty much it. And Venti's more crowd control based, whereas Kazuha is more about dealing off your damage and boosting your team's damage. And like I mentioned earlier, Venti has a harder time currently because a lot of the enemies resist his crowd control. So if all that Venti really does, all that Venti really brings to the table is his crowd control, unlike Kazuha or even Sucrose or Jean. These other characters bring other stuff that, depending on what you're fighting, is more useful, which makes Venti situational. Right now, this isn't a problem. Like I said, right now it's not a problem. It's a good thing that Venti isn't as broken as he was before. But MiHoYo said they're gonna keep making the enemies harder. Well, they haven't said, but they've implied that over time they're gonna make the enemies stronger. And that might also mean that Venti is gonna become worse and worse as all the updates roll out, since Venti being good highly relies on how good the enemies around him are. And that's my main concern. Venti's good, don't get me wrong, he just, in the long term, if the trends we're seeing continue, the boy's gonna be trash. Well, not trash, but Kazuha's already somewhat power creeping him, not exactly, but Kazuha is really strong. And if Mihoyo continues with this trend, Venti's just gonna be okay when Chesnaya comes out. Which is kind of sad since he is my first Archon. And I could be just over exaggerating, he could be amazing. I could be completely wrong. I probably am, but it's a concern that I wanted to talk about because Venti being good is directly proportional to the enemies he's facing, which isn't a great thing in the long term. I feel like a character like Kazuha in the long term, you could probably get more out of. Because even though Kazuha might not have as many X factors as Venti, he doesn't have as many drawbacks either. Anyways, that's all I have to talk about. This video is a little different than the ones I've been uploading recently. I hope you guys enjoy it. Leave a like, subscribe, stay tuned for my videos on Raiden Shogun because I'm gonna be rolling for her and I have guaranteed pity, so that's Pog. Anyways, bye guys.